Staff Sergeant Ryan Torres had always believed that military medical bays smelled like a combination of antiseptic and regret. But the UES Nightingale's infirmary added an extra note of alien herbs that made his nose twitch. He lay propped up in his recovery bed, wrapped in enough bandages to supply a mummy convention, watching the controlled chaos of a deep space medical frigate treating casualties from the Battle of Kepler Station. "Well," he said to the ceiling, which was decorated with cheerful murals that someone had clearly thought would improve morale, "at least the view's better than the trenches." The plasma burns along his left side were healing faster than expected, thanks to the Altarian medical technology that the Earth Defense Force had recently acquired through their alliance. The alien healing techniques still felt strange, a warm, tingling sensation that seemed to work from the inside out. But Ryan wasn't complaining about anything that got him back on his feet faster. "You should not speak so much," came a voice from beside his bed. "Your body requires energy for healing." Ryan turned his head to see Nurse Zaya checking his IV line with the focused intensity of someone defusing a bomb. She was Altarian, part of the medical exchange program that had brought alien healers to human ships. Her ears were longer and more pointed than human ears, and silver markings traced delicate patterns along her neck and arms, currently glowing with a soft blue light that he'd learned indicated concentration. "Speaking helps me heal," Ryan said with a grin. "It's a human thing. We talk, therefore we don't die." Zaya's large, luminous eyes, a shade of amber that seemed to shift with her mood, fixed on him with what he was beginning to recognize as her "you're being illogical" look. "That makes no biological sense," she said seriously. "Most things about humans don't make biological sense. We're basically a collection of design flaws held together by stubbornness and caffeine." "But I do not understand this reference to caffeine." "Coffee, the brown liquid that transforms grumpy humans into functional humans, essential to our species' survival." Zaya made a note on her tablet with the same gravity she'd used to record critical vital signs. Ryan suspected she was building a file on human cultural quirks that would either fascinate or terrify xenobiologists for generations. "Your plasma burns are healing well," she announced, running her scanner over his bandaged torso. "The nerve damage is minimal. You were fortunate." "Fortunate is one word for it. I prefer too stubborn to die properly." "Stubborn?" Zaya tilted her head in the way that meant she was accessing her human language database. "Ah, persistent despite logic. Yes, this describes you accurately." Ryan laughed, then immediately regretted it as his injuries protested. "Thanks for the character assessment, Doc. I am not a doctor. I am a certified medical technician, 3rd class, specializing in trauma recovery and—" "It's a figure of speech, Zaya. Humans call medical people doc, sometimes, even if they're not actually doctors." Her silver markings shifted from blue to a confused purple. "Your language contains many inefficiencies." "Yeah, well, efficiency is overrated. If we were perfectly efficient, we wouldn't have time for art, music, or really good jokes." "Jokes," Zaya repeated, like she was trying to decode an ancient language. "Humor. I am still studying this concept." Ryan watched her check his bandages with careful precision. She'd been his primary caregiver for 3 days now, and he'd noticed that she spent far more time at his bedside than with her other patients. Not that he was complaining. Her presence was oddly comforting, and her complete bewilderment at human humor was endearing. "You know," he said as she adjusted his pillows for the 4th time in 10 minutes, "with all this personal attention, people are going to start talking. They'll think we're married or something." Zaya went completely still. Her silver markings flared bright white for a moment, then settled into a pattern Ryan had never seen before, swirling spirals that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. "Married," she said quietly. "Yeah, you know, bonded, hitched, joined in matrimony, the whole till death do us part thing." Ryan was still grinning, oblivious to the sudden tension in her posture. "Though I guess death might be a while off, considering how well you're patching me up." You, Zaya's voice was barely above a whisper. You wish to be bonded with me. It's a joke, Zaya. I'm saying you're taking such good care of me that it's like having a devoted wife. It's a compliment, sort of. She stared at him for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face with an intensity that made him suddenly nervous. Her markings had shifted to a deep, pulsing gold that seemed almost hypnotic. In your culture, she said carefully, these words are humor. Well, yeah. I mean, not that being married to you would be a joke, Ryan added quickly, realizing how that sounded. You're great, it's just, we barely know each other and in your culture, bonding requires courtship, extended acquaintance. Usually, yeah, dating, getting to know each other, figuring out if you're compatible, the whole process. Zaya nodded slowly, her markings gradually returning to their normal soft blue. I see, cultural differences. Right, cultural differences. Ryan settled back into his pillows, relieved that she understood. So what's marriage like in Altarian culture? Big ceremonies, family negotiations, diplomatic arrangements. Simple, Zaya said, returning to her medical scanner. When one person declares their intent to bond while touching another in healing, and both accept the declaration, they are bonded. That's it. No ceremony, no paperwork, no. Ryan stopped mid-sentence as the implications hit him. Wait, touching in healing, you mean like medical treatment? Yes. And declaring intent, like saying you want to be married. Correct. Ryan felt his heart rate spike, and he was pretty sure the medical monitors were about to start beeping alarms. Zaya, when I said that thing about being married, you declared intent while I was healing you, she said without looking up from her scanner. In my culture, this creates a bonding contract. But I was joking. Intent can be expressed through humor. The emotional truth behind the words is what matters. Ryan stared at her, his mouth suddenly dry. So you're saying that when I joked about us being married, we became bonded, yes. Zaya finally looked at him again, and her amber eyes held something that might have been satisfaction. You are mine now, Ryan Torres, and I am yours. The medical scanner in her hands beeped cheerfully, displaying his elevated vital signs in cheerful green numbers. Ryan realized that somewhere between the joke and the explanation, his entire life had just taken a hard left turn into uncharted territory. Well, he said weakly, this is definitely going in my report under unexpected complications. There are no complications, Zaya said with the same calm professionalism she'd shown since day one. Only new responsibilities. As she walked away to check on her other patients, Ryan caught sight of her silver markings, which had settled into a warm, steady golden glow. He had the distinct feeling that his recovery was about to become far more interesting than he'd planned, and possibly more terrifying than being shot at by enemy plasma cannons. Ryan woke on his fourth day aboard the Nightingale to find Zaya rearranging his entire bedside area with the methodical precision of someone planning a military campaign. She'd moved his water pitcher, realigned his medical equipment, and somehow acquired additional pillows that she was arranging with geometric exactness. Morning sunshine, he said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Redecorating. I am optimizing your recovery environment, Zaya replied without looking up from her pillow mathematics. Proper Feng Shui improves healing rates by approximately 12%. Feng Shui is Chinese, not Altarian. I have been studying human cultural practices extensively. She stepped back to examine her work. Dr. Martinez attempted to adjust your IV flow rate yesterday. I informed him that your care was not his responsibility. Ryan blinked. Martinez is a good doctor, Zaya. There's no reason he can't. There is every reason. Her silver markings flared brighter. You are my bonded mate. Your medical care is mine to oversee. About that, Ryan said carefully, I've been thinking about our little cultural misunderstanding. Zaya's movement stopped entirely. When she turned to face him, her amber eyes held a warning that made his survival instincts perk up. Misunderstanding. Look, I meant no disrespect to your culture, but I really was just joking. Surely there's some kind of clause, some way to. You wish to dissolve our bond. The temperature in the medical bay seemed to drop several degrees. Other patients glanced over nervously as Zaya's markings shifted through colors Ryan had never seen before, deep purples and sharp silvers that made her look distinctly non-human. I'm just saying maybe we should talk about this rationally. I see. Zaya's voice carried the kind of calm that preceded natural disasters. You find the prospect of bonding with an alien so distasteful that you would dishonor both our cultures to escape it. That's not what Nurse Zaya, Dr. Elena Vasquez approached their corner of the medical bay with the careful steps of someone entering a minefield. Could I speak with you privately? Zaya's markings cycled through what Ryan was learning to recognize as intense internal conflict. I am attending to my patient. Your bonded mate will be fine for 5 minutes, Dr. Vasquez said diplomatically. We need to discuss some administrative matters. Ryan watched the two women walk to Vasquez's office, noting how other medical staff gave them a wide berth. Through the office's transparent walls, he could see an animated conversation taking place, with Vasquez gesturing frequently and Zaya standing rigid as a statue. Dude, came a voice from the next bed. What did you do to piss off the scary alien nurse? Corporal Jimmy Chen had been Ryan's squad mate before taking shrapnel to the legs at Kepler Station. His injuries were healing well, but his curiosity remained terminal. I may have accidentally gotten married, Ryan said weakly. Come again. Long story. Apparently alien humor doesn't translate well. No kidding. She's been hovering over you like a protective dragon for days. The other nurses are actually scared to come near your bed. Ryan looked around the medical bay and noticed that Chen was right. The nursing staff was giving his area a noticeably wide berth, and he caught several of them glancing nervously in his direction. This is getting out of hand, he muttered. You think? Yesterday she growled at Nurse Patterson. Growled. I didn't know Altarians could do that. Through the office window, Ryan could see Dr. Vasquez pulling up files on her computer, while Zaya stood with her arms crossed, her markings pulsing in agitated patterns. The thing is, Ryan said quietly, she saved my life. Multiple times. The plasma burns should have killed me, but she used some kind of advanced healing technique that went way beyond standard medical protocol. That sounds like she cares about you. That's what's making this complicated. Dr. Vasquez's office door slid open, and both women emerged. Zaya looked like she'd been carved from marble, while Vasquez wore the expression of someone who'd just tried to explain quantum physics to a particularly stubborn cat. Sergeant Torres, Dr. Vasquez called. Could you join us? Ryan made his way to the office, noting how Zaya immediately moved to support his arm, despite his protests that he could walk perfectly well. Sit, Vasquez said, gesturing to a chair. We need to discuss your situation. My situation. Your marriage, Vasquez said bluntly. According to Altarian law, which governs all medical personnel from their world serving on human ships, you and Nurse Zaya are legally bonded. But I was joking. Intent matters more than tone in Altarian culture. When you declared your willingness to be bonded while she was healing you, you created a binding contract. Ryan looked at Zaya, who had taken a position slightly behind and to his right, a stance that reminded him uncomfortably of a bodyguard. What does this mean, exactly? It means, Vasquez said, consulting her notes, that according to the treaties governing interspecies cooperation, your marriage is legally recognized by both human and Altarian authorities. There has to be a way out of this. The bond can only be dissolved by mutual consent or death, Zaya said quietly. Mutual consent, Ryan said hopefully. So if we both agree. I do not agree. The words hit him like a physical blow. Ryan turned in his chair to look at Zaya directly, seeing something in her amber eyes that he hadn't noticed before, something vulnerable and fierce at the same time. Zaya, You are mine now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And I am yours. This is not a burden to be escaped. This is a gift to be treasured. But we don't even know each other. I know that you make jokes when you are afraid. I know that you worry about your squad mates more than yourself. I know that you called out their names while delirious with fever, not your own family. Her markings began to glow brighter. I know that when I touch you to heal your wounds, your heartbeat synchronizes with mine. Ryan felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with alien healing techniques. I know, Zaya continued, that in 3 days of caring for you, I have felt more purpose than in 3 years of treating patients who see me as merely a useful alien. Zaya, you see me, Ryan Torres. Not my species, not my function, but me. Do you understand how rare that is? Dr. Vasquez cleared her throat. I should mention that Altarian High Command has been notified of the bonding. They're not pleased. What does that mean? Ryan asked. It means, Zaya said, her voice hardening, that my people value genetic purity above all else. A bond with a human will be seen as contamination. And they will come to retrieve me, to break the bond by force if necessary. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Over my dead body. Zaya's markings flared brilliant gold, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled, an expression that transformed her entire face. You see, she said softly, you are already beginning to understand what bonding means. As alarms began chiming throughout the ship, announcing an incoming Altarian vessel, Ryan realized that his recovery period was about to become significantly more complicated. The Altarian diplomatic vessel looked like someone had crossed a cathedral with a surgical instrument, all flowing lines and crystalline surfaces that hurt to look at directly. Through the medical bay's viewports, Ryan could see it hanging in space beside the Nightingale like a beautiful, vaguely threatening work of art. Well, he said, trying to lighten the mood, your people certainly know how to make an entrance. Zaya didn't laugh. She'd been pacing the medical bay for the past hour, her silver markings cycling through colors that Ryan was learning indicated extreme agitation. Currently, they were a deep purple shot through with silver streaks that reminded him of lightning. Ambassador Thiel is coming personally, she said, checking her communicator for the 5th time. This is unprecedented. Good unprecedented or bad unprecedented. There is no good unprecedented when dealing with the High Command. Dr. Vasquez approached their corner with the expression of someone about to deliver terminal news. The ambassador's shuttle just docked. They're requesting immediate audience with both of you. Requesting, Ryan asked. Demanding, actually, but I translated it politely. Zaya stopped pacing and turned to Ryan with an expression he'd never seen before, something between determination and desperation. Before they arrive, she said quickly, you should know something about Altarian bonding customs. I'm listening. When two Altarians bond, they share everything, thoughts, emotions, life force. It is why our bonds are considered sacred and unbreakable. Okay, with you I cannot share thoughts but the emotional connection. She placed her hand over her heart. It is real, Ryan. What I feel for you transcends cultural programming. Ryan felt his breath catch. Zaya, I need you to understand this before they try to convince you that our bond is meaningless. Before they tell you that I am merely following biological imperatives. The medical bay doors slid open with a hiss that sounded distinctly ominous. Ambassador Thiel entered with an entourage of 3 other Altarians, all wearing robes that seemed to shift colors in the light. The ambassador was tall even by Altarian standards, with silver markings that covered most of their visible skin in intricate geometric patterns. Zaya of the healing caste, Thiel said in accented but perfect English. You have brought shame upon your lineage. Ambassador, Zaya replied with a formal bow that somehow managed to convey both respect and defiance. I have fulfilled my duties. Ryan felt Zaya flinch beside him. That seems a bit harsh for falling in love. Love? Thiel's attention finally focused on Ryan, and their expression suggested they'd just noticed something distasteful on their shoe. You believe this primitive human emotion is relevant? I believe, Ryan said, his temper starting to heat up, that Zaya is a person, not property. And if she wants to stay here with me, that's her choice to make. Humans, Thiel said with obvious disdain, always believe choice matters more than genetic integrity. Damn right we do. Thiel gestured to their companions, who began moving toward Zaya with purposeful steps. The contaminated individual will be removed for purification. Resistance is futile. Is it though? Ryan asked conversationally, not moving from his position between Zaya and the approaching Altarians. Because I'm pretty sure Dr. Vasquez mentioned something about patient rights and medical ethics. You cannot fight us, human. We are trained in combat disciplines beyond your comprehension. Maybe, but I've got something you don't have. Which is really good friends with an overdeveloped sense of loyalty. The medical bay doors hissed open again, and Corporal Chen limped in, followed by the rest of Ryan's squad, all of whom were supposed to be recovering from various injuries, but had apparently decided that mobility was overrated. Hey, Sarge, Chen said cheerfully. Heard you were having some visitors, thought we'd come say hi. Private Maria Santos, her left arm in a regeneration cast, smiled at the Altarians with the kind of cheerfulness that usually preceded violence. Love what you've done with the intimidating alien diplomat look. Very shiny. This is not your concern, Thiel said, but Ryan noticed their confident tone had wavered slightly. See, that's where you're wrong, said Sergeant First Class David Kim, Ryan's second-in-command, who was leaning heavily on a medical crutch but still managed to look menacing. When someone threatens our squad leader, it becomes our concern real quick. He's not your squad leader anymore, one of Thiel's companions said. He belongs to us now. Actually, Dr. Vasquez said, checking her tablet, according to the medical regulations governing interspecies patient care, Sergeant Torres is still under my medical authority, and I haven't released him for diplomatic negotiations. Thiel's markings flared bright silver. You cannot prevent us from retrieving contaminated personnel. Can't I? Vasquez smiled. Medical emergency protocols supersede diplomatic immunity. And I'm suddenly very concerned about the psychological trauma this confrontation might cause my recovering patients. Ryan watched the standoff develop with a mixture of pride and terror. His squad mates had positioned themselves in a loose semicircle around the Altarians, while Zaya had moved to stand directly beside him, her hand clasped firmly in his. You would risk interstellar incident for one contaminated Altarian, Thiel demanded. I'd risk a lot more than that, Ryan said quietly, for the woman who saved my life and then had the courage to choose love over fear. Zaya's markings flared brilliant gold, and she squeezed his hand tightly. You would truly stand with me against my own people. Zaya, I may be slow on the uptake, but I'm not blind. You've been taking care of me, protecting me, and showing me kindness without asking for anything in return. If that's not worth fighting for, I don't know what is. This is highly irregular, Thiel said, but Ryan noticed they'd stopped moving toward Zaya. Most of the best things in life are irregular, Ryan replied. Regular is overrated. For the first time since the confrontation began, Zaya laughed, a sound like silver bells that seemed to lighten the entire atmosphere of the medical bay. You see, she said to Thiel, this is why I choose him. He finds joy even in impossible circumstances. Joy, Thiel repeated with the tone of someone discussing a particularly virulent disease. Try it sometime, Ryan suggested. I hear it's good for the complexion. And despite everything, despite the diplomatic crisis and the cultural clash and the very real possibility of interstellar war, Zaya laughed again. The sound seemed to change something fundamental in the room, and Ryan began to think that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer even the most bureaucratic of obstacles. The standoff in the medical bay had reached the point where even the life support systems seemed to be holding their breath. Ambassador Thiel's companions had spread out in what Ryan recognized as a tactical formation, while his squad mates had responded with their own defensive positions despite their various injuries. "This has gone far enough," Thiel declared, their silver markings now pulsing with aggressive patterns. "Enforcement protocols will be implemented." "Enforcement protocols?" Dr. Vasquez asked with dangerous calm. "Physical retrieval of contaminated personnel, with or without consent." "Over my dead body," Ryan said, stepping fully in front of Zaya. "That can be arranged," one of Thiel's companions replied with chilling politeness. Sergeant Kim shifted his weight on his medical crutch. "Did this sparkly alien just threaten to kill our squad leader?" "I believe they did," Private Santos said, flexing her uninjured hand. "That seems like poor diplomatic etiquette." "Children," Thiel said dismissively, "you cannot comprehend the forces you are challenging. The Altarian hegemony has maintained genetic purity for 3,000 years. We will not allow it to be compromised by human sentiment." "Here's a thought," Ryan said, his voice carrying the kind of calm that usually preceded explosions. "What if genetic purity is just another way of saying you're too scared to grow?" The temperature in the medical bay seemed to drop several degrees. Thiel's markings flared brilliant white, and Ryan realized he might have just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "You dare." "Actually, Doctor," Vasquez interrupted, her tablet chiming with incoming data, "I dare. Because I've just received some very interesting information from the Altarian medical database." All eyes turned to the doctor, who was scrolling through data with the focused intensity of someone who'd just found the smoking gun. "It seems," she continued, "that Altarian bonding law supersedes racial purity statutes. According to your own legal code, Section 247. 6. Any bond formed during life-saving medical intervention is considered sacred and unbreakable, regardless of species compatibility." Thiel went completely still. "That statute refers only to emergency bonds between Altarians." "Actually, no. It refers to emergency bonds performed by certified Altarian medical personnel, which Zaya is, on anyone receiving life-saving treatment, which Ryan was." Vasquez's smile was sharp enough to cut space-time. "The law makes no species distinctions." "Impossible. The translators must have." "I'm reading from the original Altarian text," Vasquez said sweetly. "My linguistic AI is quite thorough." Ryan felt Zaya's hand tighten in his. "Is this true?" she asked quietly. "Apparently so." "Which means," Vasquez continued, "that attempting to dissolve this bond by force would be a violation of your own sacred laws. I'm curious how your high command would view that." The silence stretched long enough for several small civilizations to rise and fall. Finally, Thiel spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding crystals. "This complicates matters." "Complications are my specialty," Ryan said, along with inappropriate humor and really bad timing. "There must be a way to resolve this that maintains Altarian honor," one of Thiel's companions suggested. "There is," Zaya said suddenly, her voice stronger than Ryan had heard it since the confrontation began. "I formally renounce my Altarian citizenship and accept exile." "Zaya, no," Ryan started. "It is the only way. I choose my bond over my birthright. I choose love over genetic purity." Her amber eyes met his. "I choose you, Ryan Torres, over everything else." The words hit him like a physical force. Ryan had been in combat, had faced death multiple times, but nothing had prepared him for the moment when someone chose to sacrifice everything for him. He struggled to find words. "That's the most terrifying and beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me." "Is that a yes?" Zaya asked with a small smile. "That's a hell yes, but..." Ryan turned to face Thiel. "I've got a better idea." "Human," Thiel said wearily. "Your species' capacity for complicating simple situations is legendary." "Thank you, I'll take that as a compliment." Ryan straightened to his full height, wincing only slightly as his healing wounds protested. "What if instead of exile, Zaya and I both transferred to the Diplomatic Medical Corps. The what now? Chen asked. Think about it, Ryan continued, his mind racing. Human-alien medical cooperation is going to be essential for future alliance operations. Who better to lead that effort than a bonded pair who understand both cultures? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her tablet. That's actually not a terrible idea. The DMC has been requesting personnel with cross-species medical experience for months. Thiel's markings shifted through several colors before settling on a cautious amber. The Diplomatic Medical Corps. You would serve as ambassadors. Medical ambassadors, Ryan clarified, helping bridge the gap between human and Altarian healing practices, making sure future joint operations don't end up with accidental marriages because nobody bothered to explain the cultural differences. This would prevent other contaminations, one of Thiel's companions said thoughtfully. Exactly. We'd be like a cultural vaccine, preventing future diplomatic incidents through education and really good coffee. Zaya's markings had shifted to the bright gold that Ryan was learning meant happiness. You would give up your military career for this. Zaya, you were ready to give up your entire planet. I think I can handle a career change. Thiel consulted with their companions in rapid Altarian, their conversation a musical series of chimes and harmonics that sounded like a debate between wind chimes. The High Command, Thiel said finally, might find this acceptable if the human demonstrates proper understanding of Altarian customs. I'm a quick learner, Ryan said. Plus, I've got the galaxy's best teacher. There would be conditions, Thiel continued, formal bonding ceremonies, recognition by both governments, extensive cultural training, and really uncomfortable formal dinners where I'll probably use the wrong fork, Ryan added. I'm prepared for that sacrifice. For the first time since arriving, Ambassador Thiel's expression shifted into what might have been amusement. You are unexpected human. I get that a lot, usually right before something explodes, but I'm hoping to break that pattern. Zaya laughed, the sound filling the medical bay with warmth. You see, even now he finds humor in uncertainty. This is why I chose him. Very well, Thiel said with obvious reluctance. The High Command will be informed of this. Creative solution. Provided you both complete the formal bonding ceremonies according to traditional protocols. Traditional protocols, Ryan asked nervously. 7 days of ritualistic preparation, ceremonial exchanges of genetic material for compatibility testing, and a public declaration before representatives of both species. Genetic material. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. Saliva, Zaya whispered. It's just saliva. Oh, that's actually not as bad as I was imagining. 3 months later, Ryan stood in the diplomatic chapel aboard New Geneva Station, wearing a uniform that somehow managed to combine human military dress with Altarian ceremonial elements. The result looked like someone had crossed a space marine with a very formal disco ball, but Zaya had assured him he looked appropriately magnificent. The ceremony itself had been a fascinating blend of human and Altarian traditions. Ryan had promised to love, honor, and cherish, while Zaya had pledged her life force, healing energy, and genetic lineage to their bond. The vows had been witnessed by representatives from both species, including a surprisingly cheerful Ambassador Thiel and Ryan's entire squad, who had managed to attend despite their various states of recovery. You may now exchange the ritual blessing, the officiant announced. Ryan turned to Zaya, who was radiant in ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her silver markings were glowing with patterns he'd never seen before, swirling galaxies of gold and blue that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. So, he said, taking her hands, any regrets about that whole "you're mine now" thing? Only that it took you so long to understand what I meant, she replied, her amber eyes sparkling with mischief she'd learned from him. Well, I've always been a slow learner. Good thing I've got a lifetime to catch up. Several lifetimes, if Altarian longevity treatments work on humans. Several lifetimes of terrible jokes and questionable coffee. Are you sure you know what you're getting into? I am certain, Zaya said softly, that loving you will be the greatest adventure of any lifetime. Ryan kissed his wife, his actual, legal, properly ceremonied wife, while their friends cheered and Ambassador Thiel made notes on their tablet about the success of interspecies diplomatic initiatives. Later, as they settled into their new quarters aboard the diplomatic station, Ryan reflected on how a single careless joke had changed everything. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a cultural bridge, a medical diplomat, and the husband of the most remarkable woman in the galaxy. Any last thoughts about our accidental marriage? Zaya asked, curled against his side as they watched the stars wheel past their viewport. Just one, Ryan said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Best joke I ever made. Zaya's laughter filled their quarters like music, and Ryan decided that sometimes the most beautiful things in life really did start with the most